Welcome, everyone. I am excited to be here. You are in my class, Intro to Silhouette. So this class is for beginners for the Silhouette software, the Silhouette machines. My name is Kelly Wayment, and I am here at Silhouette headquarters. Just to give you a little background on myself, I am a Silhouette super fan. Ever since I started using my first Silhouette machine in 2008, I never looked back. So I love the machines, I love the software, and I love to teach all about the machines and software. So I have a bunch, or through Silhouette, there are a whole bunch of how-to videos on how to use the various features of the software. I started recording those about 4 years ago, and it's just kind of moved along. So we've got how-to videos that are just screencast. We've got full-length classes on using the different machines and different materials. We've got live classes for projects. And this one is just kind of an introduction for beginners. So we are using Zoom and I believe YouTube Live. So if you have questions for me as we go along, go ahead and ask those in the chat. And I've got McKenna and Brian that may be feeding those questions to me so I can answer your questions as we go along. And just so you know that this class is only an hour, so there's no way we're going to cover everything with Silhouette, but we'll cover a lot of the basics. And then if you have questions, I can answer those too. Because I can't cover everything, let me go ahead and show you some resources that you're going to want to be able to refer to. So let me share my screen. And you should be seeing the Silhouette YouTube channel. So if you're on YouTube, this is the logo that you are looking for, Silhouette Inc. And this has all of our how-to videos and classes and everything. So first, I want to show you a good couple of playlists that you want to know about. So if I click on playlists, this Silhouette 101 video classes, this is a good one. So if I click view full playlist, these classes, they were actually filmed with the Cameo 3, but the software is the same, whether you're using a Cameo 3, a Cameo 4. There are some minor differences between the machines, but these classes really dig deep into like certain materials, and I think you'll find them really helpful. There's print and cut. There's also a couple like on 3D printing for the Silhouette Alta and the Silhouette Mint. But most of them are for the Silhouette Cameo. And of course, you can use the Silhouette Portrait. You're just using a smaller size. Another playlist that is good to know about. Actually, there's several. So down here, Silhouette Studio version 4.1 how-to videos. That is all of the software in the current version of Studio. I mean, it's a little bit older, so it doesn't include everything your software does now, but this is where you would start, is the Silhouette Studio version 4.1 how-to videos. And if you scroll to the bottom, you're going to find more of the basic stuff, and kind of up towards the top, you'll find Designer Edition or Business Edition. So you can find all those features. And then so that covers 4.1, but we've also got Silhouette Studio features for version 4.2, and we've got Silhouette Studio for 4.3. We do have 4.4. You might just need to search that. I don't think we started a playlist for that one. But anyway, so that is a huge resource for you, the Silhouette YouTube channel and those certain playlists. Okay, another resource for you is the Silhouette 101 blog. So that's just silhouette101.com. And this will have all kinds of tutorials. Here's where you'll find Zoom classes. This has its own post for just the July Zoom classes. And then it's got tutorials, and you can use the search bar to look for something, or you can just scroll through. That's got all sorts of things for you. Also, these little headers are important on the Silhouette 101 blog. So if you go to Get Started, you can find unboxing videos for your various machines. If you go to tutorials, you can see free ebooks. So these ebooks go along with a lot of those classes that I showed you on the Silhouette 101 Learning Series playlist on YouTube. So these ebooks, most of those go along with those classes. And there's also, if you go under videos, there are software tutorials, classes, you'll find a lot of those same classes. So there's a lot of ways to get to the same place, but Silhouette101.com and the Silhouette YouTube channel are great places to find more information. And then the third resource is silhouetteamerica.com. So this is where you're going to be able to look at the different machines to compare them, and actually purchase your machines and purchase your products, like the specialty materials, sticker paper and vinyl and all those fun things. What I want to show you here is if you go to software and then desktop software, this is how you can download the Silhouette Studio software that we're working with. So unless you have some other really good reason, maybe a teacher that you trust or Silhouette support has told you to go with like a legacy version, you want to work with the current version. So right now we're working with version 4.4.552. And make sure you download the correct one. If you're a Mac user, there's the Mac. If you're a Windows user, most of you will use the Windows 64-bit. Okay, and then if you need to set up your machine, you can go to Machine Setup right here. Just click that button, and that will actually help you set up an account and register your machine and get started that way. And so I'm not going to cover that. The one other thing I want to show you on this page that is on the Silhouette software page, there's more than one way to get to it, but this is a little hidden gem. You want to click this little link that says click here to see feature comparisons for all editions. And this is going to bring up not only feature comparisons for these different editions. So you've got Basic Edition, Designer Edition Plus, and Business Edition. You can see which of these features are covered in those various upgrades. And so you can decide, which features you want and see if it's worth the upgrade. And I will tell you right now, Business Edition is amazing. You would not regret it if you buy that one. But over here on the left, you can actually look at all these features individually with a little video icon. So if you want to know about like Pop-up Creator, you just click on the little video button and it will take you to YouTube, one of those 4.1 or 4.2 or 4.3 features. It'll take you right there. So this is a great place. And so you can also find it on the Silhouette 101 blog, but if you just look, let me zoom in real quick here, see if this works. SilhouetteAmerica.com, and you're under software, Silhouette Studio features comparison chart. But again, you can get to that from the desktop software and scroll down below all these Silhouette Studio versions and click here to see feature comparisons for all editions. Okay, now I mentioned also on SilhouetteAmerica.com that you could compare machines. So you would just click on the shop button and machines, and this will show you the various cutting machines we've got. So today I'm using the Silhouette Cameo 4, the 12-inch version, but you can learn about all these other machines through this page. Now, when you do have a Silhouette machine, you want to set up an account, and you'll use the same account for both your Silhouette America account that has all of like your license keys if you were to buy upgrades, and you register your machines, and then also the Silhouette Design Store. So use the same email address for one account with Silhouette, and that'll work for all of those. Okay, and then another place, if you need to set up your machine, you can click on this little support button and machine setup. And then you just continue through and choose, you know, here's where you can register, you can set up a new account, and you can review if you have already set your account up once. You can also go back and see that information. All right, so that's enough of, okay, question?
All right, so somebody asked, is there an annual pay for the upgraded software?
That's a great question. So when you upgrade your software, so that an upgrade means you're moving from basic edition and into like designer edition or designer edition plus or business edition. So once you upgrade, once you pay for that upgrade, it's yours forever. So I'll click right here. I'm in software and buy upgrades. And here's where you can see Silhouette Studio license keys. And here's where you can see these various, and you can buy your digital version. There's no subscription for it. You pay for it once and it's yours forever. And so then when you do updates to the software, which everybody needs to do when there's a major update that adds new features, your upgrade continues. So sometimes there are features that just go with Designer Edition and higher, that if you have Designer Edition, then when you update your software, you might get a new feature. And so once you buy that upgrade, you keep it forever. And so, yeah, great question. All right, so now let's move into Silhouette Studio. I'm going to make this look like yours. I'm going to use the standard edition. I'm assuming that most of you as beginners have standard edition, but if you do have some of those upgrades, then you might just see a few extra icons. We're not going to cover all those right now, but I just want my screen to be in basic edition. All right, so there are 4 main tabs across the top over here on the right. So there's the design page. This is where obviously you do all of your designing and opening your files and manipulating them. There's the store tab, there's the library tab, and there's the send tab. So if we go to the store tab, this is where you can buy your designs to use in Silhouette Studio. So you can completely design from scratch. There's shape tools and things. I'll show you a little bit of that, but you can buy all of your designs one at a time, and you get to keep them to use in your software. And you can actually even buy SVG versions for just a slightly higher price. But one of the things I want to show you on the design store, silhouettedesign.com, and you notice I clicked that button from Silhouette Studio and it automatically opened a browser for me. You can also, if you're not opening it from Silhouette Studio, you can open it just silhouettedesign.com. All right, so here I am. I'm going to go to deals and free designs. And every Tuesday, Silhouette releases a free design of the week. And so every Tuesday, I suggest that you go in and see what the free design is. And I get them all, no matter what, whether I think I'm going to use them or not, because I can use pieces of them in some of my designs. So right now, this is the free shape of the week, free design of the week. So if I just click on it, same as with any design, if you find one you like, you just click on it. If you like it, you can add it to your cart. So I'll just click the cart button. And now it's got an arrow that says I can check out. But if I wanted to do some more browsing, I could. So
how long do you have to get the free design?
So the question is, how long do you have to get the free design? You have it Tuesday through the following Monday. So every Tuesday you get a new design, and the free design is no longer free, but you can still purchase it for 99 cents or whatever it is at full price. So you've got it Tuesday through like midnight on the Monday after that. Once you have your shapes, just click on the cart in the upper right-hand corner. You would obviously need to sign in if you're not already signed in. But since this is a free design, it's showing as 0. If I have credits, it will show me my credits being applied. But really, once you're ready here, you just click checkout and it'll ask you for your password. And it will download. And the Silhouette Design Store and Silhouette Studio are connected. So as soon as you buy it from the Silhouette Design Store, it's going to show up in your library in Silhouette Studio. So I'm going to go back to Silhouette Studio and I will check my library. And all of the designs, as soon as you buy them from the design store, they go into your recent downloads folder. So I'm going to scroll down. You can see I've created a whole bunch of subfolders, and that's something you can do to organize your designs. And if you have thousands and thousands of designs, you can just use the search feature up here in the upper right corner. But let's see, recent downloads. And you can see here's that design that I just bought from the design store. It's there. Now, if I want some extra information on it, you can just click on this little, it's kind of a little box icon, and it will show it to you larger. It shows you the design ID number. If somebody's asking, you know, what design ID number did you use, it's right there in that extra information. Okay, so that is.
If we want to cover this later on in the class, but somebody asked, is it possible to save designs that you create yourself? So I don't know if you want to go over that later in the class or right now.
Sure. You can save your designs, and why don't I show that after we create a design? I will show you how to do that, to save it to your own. So you can save it to your library, or you can just save it to your hard drive. So I save everything that I create onto my hard drive so I can find that file again later. You know, if I did something that I liked, and then 6 months later, I'm like, oh, I want that. I want to use that again. And I already had it resized perfectly. So I can go back to my hard drive and just find that. But if it's something basic that I want to use over and over and over again, then I'll save it to my library. So you have both those options. I don't save everything to my library, just the things that I intend to use over and over again. So like a specific card shape that I'll use as a base for cards. Okay, so got these 4 tabs, and then I just want to show you some things across the top. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and see if you guys can see this. Okay, so you've got, as with most software, you've got your file, edit options, things like that across the top. In Silhouette Studio, I really like using the icons. They're just faster, and they all have a little tool tips. So if I hover over them, you can see these little tool tips. So that one you know is open, that one you know is save. So these little tool tips are really helpful. You've got copy, paste. This one is your friend. This is the undo button. So also, like other software programs, you can use Control-Z or Command-Z if you're on a Mac. We'll also do undo, but you've got this little icon if you're not familiar with common shortcut keys. Another thing I want to show you are these zoom options. So let me get this back to a normal screen. These zoom options are nice because you can just click once and it'll zoom in a certain amount. Click the zoom out and it'll zoom out a certain amount. This one is nice, the drag over a shape to zoom. Let me open just a little shape here. Let's say I have this shape on my page. And if I use the drag over shape, if I click it once, it'll zoom in right to the spot where I clicked my mouse. If let me go back to full page. If I want a specific area zoomed in, I can click and drag my mouse and it will zoom into that specific area that I want it to zoom into. So I love that one. Another great one is zooming in and out using mouse. So if you click that and then click and drag your mouse up and down on your page, it's going to zoom in and out really fast. So if you have a design that opens, let's see, we can even open this layered deer, which I suspect is going to open kind of, so I can spread those pieces out. And since I can zoom out really fast, I can see them all zooming in and out. So I really like that one. And then you've got a pan, which just means you can click and drag to slide it around. And then fit to window, that's a good one. It'll just bring you back to whatever media size you have set up to be your full page. All right, so I'm going to select everything on my page. That's another quick button, and just delete. So I've got a clean page again. All right, so along the left are your tools. So this select button, this little arrow, this is the one that will help you select things. It'll help you, click on an open object on your page. And if you have your settings so that one of these tools on the side doesn't go away. So like if you're trying to draw a line and it just draws line after line after line and you don't know what to do, you can just go back to this little select button and it'll get you back to being able to select things and not continue using one of these tools. So you've got lines you can draw, you've got shapes you can draw, you've got text. So if you use this one, you just click on the page and you can start typing and choosing and then you can choose your fonts. And I'll show you that in just a second. But these are some really handy tools on the left. If you ever can't get back to, well, I already said this. If you keep drawing shapes and you don't know how to stop, just click your select button again.
Somebody asked how to take the grids off of their page.
Okay, so great question. The grid is an option that you can turn on and off really easily. So if you just type your letter G, that's going to turn your grid on or off. So I'm just tapping G on my keyboard and it turns it on and off. The other way you can do it is here on this page setup panel. This panel opens every time you open a new document, so you'll see it a lot. But if you don't have it open, it's just this top panel up on the right-hand side. So this second tab is your grid settings. And here's where you can, if you don't want to use your letter G, you can just click this checkbox to show grid or not show grid. You can also snap to grid, so your shapes will actually snap to a grid. This is a really nice one. So I'm going to draw a little shape and it's going to snap to my grid. Let me zoom in just a little bit. So if I draw a shape, it's going to stay exactly with these grid lines, which is really nice if you're designing, but then it's super easy to turn off again. You just uncheck snap to grid. So this is something, if you have a shape that doesn't seem to be moving smoothly as you drag it across your page, this is a place you would check and make sure you don't have checked snap to grid. And then when you move your object, it'll slide smoothly and does not feel like it needs to stick with those grids. And you can darken your grid or lighten your grid. Some people like it really dark. I like my grid actually really faint. And so I will drag it. Hopefully you can see that that I am just kind of dragging it down towards the white area, and my grid fades into the background, which I really like. So if I turn off my grid, there's another way to see the lines of your mat. Back in the first tab of page setup panel, if you slide this transparency line, the transparency slider, it's going to make your white document size kind of disappear. And so these lines show up that match your cutting mat. So if I were to switch to like a portrait cutting mat and change my media size to letter, so there I can see my document size. There it is, full white, but I can change the transparency to see how it's going to look as I place it on the mat. So even a letter size paper is 8.5 inches wide, but the mat cuts 8 inches on a portrait. And so you can see where those 8 inches are that it will cut. Okay, any questions on that?
Jessica asked, is there a reason I wouldn't have the transparent under the height?
Nope, that's been there for a while. So that transparency slider should be there. I guess if you're running a really old version, old enough that I've forgotten about it, you might not see it, but you should, on your page setup panel, you should have these options. So your machine, you can choose your machine. I'm going to set mine to Cameo. My cutting mat, I'm going to switch back to Cameo, 12 by 12 inch. My media size, I can set it to all these different media sizes, and these will change based on what machine you have selected and what mat you have selected. So it's kind of a dynamic thing. You won't have every choice depending on what you set ahead of it. So if you set your machine to portrait, you're not going to be able to choose a Cameo cutting mat. But if you have the Cameo set as your machine, then you can choose the Cameo cutting mat. And obviously you'll have to have the machine to actually send your job at that size. Okay, so page setup panel, this is a really important panel. And you can change to custom sizes. The other thing I always do is show cut border. I check that box, so I always know what space I have to work with. So if I set it to like a letter size, and I'll just show you with transparency, you'll be able to see this better. This show cut border, this cut border is right here. It's red. And if I uncheck that, that disappears. That red cut border disappears. And it, especially if you're doing something like print and cut, or you're working with weird shapes, you just don't ever want to be beyond the cut border. And as long as you keep that checked, you'll always know what you can cut. Because if you move these shapes out of that cut border, they suddenly will not cut. So only the things on your media that are within the cut border, those are the only things that are going to cut. So you've got kind of this little holding area off to the side that you can just drag shapes over here that you don't want to cut. You don't want to delete them maybe because you're going to use them later. Like if you're cutting things in different colors, but you've got it all open on one document, you can just set stuff off to the side and it won't cut until you move it back into the cut area.
Can you explain, somebody asked, what is the constrained media to cutting mat?
Okay, so constrained media to cutting mat, this is, especially if you're a Curio user, I don't know that we would have any Curio users today, but you always want that box checked for if you're a Curio user. So basically what that means is you have a cutting mat. So let's see, I can go 12 by 12 on my media size. If I tried to go bigger than that, if I have this box checked, it's not going to let me. it's kind of a safeguard in a lot of ways, just to make sure that you don't make your media size huge. So if I uncheck that and then say I want to go 20 inches wide, it'll let me make that document bigger, but it's not going to do me any good for actual cutting purposes, because you can see that this cut border is still there. But if I check that box, constrain media to cutting mat, it's going to limit me to my cutting mat so I don't accidentally set it too big and think it's going to cut in that area. So it's just kind of a safeguard. I don't use it very often unless I'm using my curio, but it's totally optional. Okay, so let's go over a little bit on, I showed you where you can do draw lines and shapes and text. Those are the most often. And of course, there's videos on these other things. So if you hover your mouse and it says, your little tooltip says draw a note or freehand tools, you can look at those videos on that list that I showed you, and you can look for freehand tools and it'll show you, you can find a video on all of those features. All right, let's move on to panels. We talked about the most important one, which is the page setup panel. Another one you might use pretty often is offset. So down here it says open the offset panel. It looks like kind of a star with an outline around it. So if I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. If I click a shape and then I click offset, that's going to create an offset automatically for me at exactly the size I have it set. And you can make that bigger and smaller just by dragging the slider, or you can actually input, say you want at 1/2 inch, type in 0.5 for your distance, and it'll make it exactly 1/2 inch. And then you've also got a corner or a rounded option. So offset and then internal offset, that obviously is going to make a shape inside the one you had selected. So that's a good one. It's also nice for creating offset around text if you want to, make like a scrapbook page header. If you click apply, then it kind of welds itself, and now you've got a background that you can cut separately from your text itself, and it's just kind of creates like this shadow layer and offset, so it's kind of nice. Text style panel. This is where you can, over here on the right, it's a letter A on the left to initially type your text, create your text, and then if you want to do adjustments to it, you can click on this panel over here on the right that says open text style panel. And that is going to let you choose different fonts for the text that you have selected.
We have a question about the offset panel.
Okay.
So someone asked if you can undo an offset or change it after you've exited the panel.
So an offset to actually use like the undo button.
I think once you create it, if you can change.
Oh, I guess the question is if you can adjust the offset once you've created it. So I'll create an offset right here and I can change it up until the point I click apply, with size and stuff. But once I click apply, then it's no longer adjustable. You have created a shape that is its own shape. So you could use your undo button. And you can see how that's going back a little bit at a time. But really, you would just start over because it's such a simple function. So once you have created that offset, it's no longer adjustable through the offset panel. All right, so I showed you a little bit of the text. You also have up here the quick access toolbar. So this along the top is going to change depending on what you have selected. So right now I've got text selected. So I've got some text options. So I can change just really quickly the font name, the font size, the justification. Those are all some quick choices on the quick access toolbar. But if I select a different shape, it's not text, so it doesn't have the text options. So depending on what you have selected on your page, those options in your quick access toolbar will change. If I don't have anything selected, most of that goes away. What I do always have is my fill color. So if I want to have something selected, I can change the fill color. I can fill it with yellow. I can change my line color and my line thickness. So now I've selected this rounded rectangle, and let's just make it blue. And let's say I want to increase the thickness. I can just use the quick access toolbar. Now, all of those, there's a fill panel on the right, and there's a line style panel on the right. Those panels will give you more options than what you see in your quick access toolbar. But the quick access toolbar is nice because it lets you use the most common tools. Okay, so what I did is I selected some of these really quickly, and I changed them all at the same time to kind of a purple line color, and then I changed the thickness here to 1.0 because I want to show you one of my favorite tools on the quick access toolbar, and that is the aligned tools. So I'm going to select all those together, and up here you've got your align. So you could align them left, align their left edges together. You could align them in the middle. My favorite one is center. So this centers it vertically and horizontally all at the same time. So those are some great tools to know about.
Kelly, we had a question. So Michael asked, are the fonts accessible in other programs?
Good question. So the question is, are the fonts accessible in other programs? And yes, almost all of them. So there's going to be a few exceptions, like maybe special color fonts that won't work in other programs. But basically, if you buy a font from the design store, it will install on your computer and you are able to use it in like Microsoft Word or Photoshop. Those fonts will show up in your other programs. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a quick project so we can move on to actually seeing the machine in action and things you need to watch out there. We're just going to create a bookmark. So I'm going to just do two shapes. I'm going to do a rounded rectangle. So over here on the left, I've got my drawing tool. So I'm going to go to this rounded rectangle, click on it once, and then you can see my cursor has changed just a little bit to a little kind of a plus symbol. So I'm going to drag that out just with my mouse and just kind of choose a generic rounded rectangle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. If I click on these little red dots, I can adjust the roundness of my rectangle. I'm going to undo that because usually I like to hold my shift key, and if I drag that, then they will move proportionately. So I want to make kind of a wide, little bit wider than the default for my rounded rectangle. And then I'm going to choose an ellipse tool, which will do either an oval or a circle. So I click on that and I can just click and drag, and that's going to make me an ellipse. And once I've drawn that, I can adjust it. So see, it's maybe not wide enough, so I can drag a side handle. You can see that'll stretch it. If if I do a side handle and then stretch along the top and bottom, I can kind of squish that vertically. And we'll see where that gets me. I'm going to select these both together and use my favorite quick access toolbar, which is just to center. And that looks pretty good. So now I want to just make these one solid shape. Right now, if I were to send this to my cutter, it would cut both of those shapes individually, and the pieces that overlap, it would cut also, which I don't want. So I'm going to weld it. So this is on your quick access toolbar. You can click weld selected shapes and it'll just turn them into one shape. The other thing you can do is a right click. So I like to use my right click. It's a good one to play around with. When you have something selected, you can right click and see what your options are. Now I've already welded this, but you can see weld is there. I could create an automatic offset that wouldn't give me choices in how big the offset is, but it would do just a generic offset. And so there's things like cut and copy and paste. Those are nice that you can all access with a right click, depending on what you're right clicking on.
Kelly, we have another question.
Okay.
So Jessica asked, when you zoom in, how do you zoom back out?
Okay, so zooming in and out, you can zoom out with this little zoom out button, but if you want to get really quickly to your full page, just click this fit to window, and that'll give you your full page size again. All right, I want to turn this into a bookmark. We could even turn it into a gift tag if I were to stretch it, this way. That might be a cute little gift tag, but I'm going to make it kind of wide so it'll be a bookmark. But what I want to do is make a little circle. So I'm going to choose draw an ellipse, and I just want to make a small circle. If I hold my shift key while I am dragging, that will keep it in a perfect circle. So I want to keep it, about 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to align this in the middle. So up here in the quick access toolbar, align middle. And now once I have it where I want to be able to move these together. And so I'm going to click group. And that way, if I just select one part of it, it's all going to move together. All right, now let me set this to letter size because I'm going to be cutting from letter size paper. So in my media size, I'll choose letter. And just kind of position that so I can save paper. I don't want to stick it right in the middle if this is the only thing I'm cutting, because I can use that paper later. Okay, so here's another way. This was brought up earlier. Do you want to save it to your hard drive or do you want to save it to your library? So if I think I want to keep this bookmark and use it more, if I want to be able to just open this exact bookmark a bunch of times, I might save it to my library. So you can go File, Save As, Save to Library. And then it's going to give me some options where I can name it. So down here at the bottom, I'm just going to name it bookmark and click OK. And now I have this bookmark in my library. So whenever you save to your library, scroll down, it's going to be in your user designs folder. And here it is right here. I can look at it a little bigger. So you can see that that's saved to my library. Now, like I said, I don't like to save most things to my library, only if I'm going to use them over and over again. So most of the time, I'm just going to go File, Save As, Save to Hard Drive. And it's just going to, I suggest creating a folder that says Silhouette and just save all of your designs into your folder that says Silhouette. And so now if I name it bookmark for class, I'll know kind of what that was later if I want to go find it again. All right, so let's go to the send panel because I want to show you some things in there. We have got some red lines. So if it is showing bold red, then your machine is planning on cutting it or sketching it, whatever tool you have inserted. It's going to perform the action that you select with the red lines. So if I select it, it defaults to cut. If you have text, it's going to default to cut edge. And I will show you what cut edge does. So remember how we grouped this little circle with the bookmark? That, if I have cut, it's going to cut all the pieces that are grouped together. If I were to choose cut edge, that circle disappears. Now it's only going to cut what I have as the most outer edge of any overlapped shapes. And that's whether it's grouped or not. And so cut edge is if you like have text on here and you're going to print it and you only want the outside edge to cut. Cut edge is a really good one to know. Now, if you have things that you can't figure out how not to cut it, you can always go ungroup it and pick those individual pieces and say like cut or no cut. But for right now, I want to leave that grouped and I want it to cut because I do want that little hole to cut. So that's actually pretty important. So good for beginners to know that you can choose what you have selected, whether it does cut, no cut, or cut edge. Now, if you move it off of your page, it's not going to cut. Remember how we talked about this cut border? It's only going to cut what is within your cut border. So I've moved it off to the side. It's not bold. If I move it back on, it's bold, but really only this part that's the bright bold is going to cut. If I have something overlapping this cut line, the blade is actually going to pick up right here and not cut beyond that cut border. And so it's kind of a safety. It will only cut what's on your page. Okay, so now I do not have my tool installed. I've got the Cameo 4, and so it's waiting for me to insert my tool before it gives me all of my choices. If you're using like a Cameo 3 or Portrait 2, that doesn't have the automatic tool detection, and so it'll let you set up whatever you want for your tool. And I do want to make sure that I'm connected to my machine. So right now it is connected. I've got green, it says ready to load. But if it's not seeing your machine, you just need to click on this little, let me zoom in just a little bit. Click on this little machine icon, and it will show you all the machines you have available. So if you have Bluetooth turned on your machine, it'll give you Bluetooth options with this symbol. And if you're using USB, it's got the little USB symbol. So I want the Cameo 4 and I'm going to use USB. So I'm going to click on that one and zoom back out. And it says ready to load, but I do need to insert my tool. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. Okay, stop screen sharing. And so let me show you these blades. I have got 3 different blades here, and all 3 of these will actually work in the Cameo 4. If you're using an older machine, this might be familiar to you, this black manual blade. this one will work in older machines, and it also works in the Cameo 4 if you have this black adapter, and that should have come with your Cameo 4, the adapter. If you're using a manual blade, you need to find out what settings, also for this Cameo 4 manual blade, you need to find out what your settings are going to be and adjust it yourself. So like cardstock, it's going to tell me to set it to a 3. So you would just twist it to a 3. And in the old ratchet blades, you have to twist it in the machine. It's got a little groove where you can adjust that. Okay, but I love the auto blade. So I'm going to use the auto blade. That means that when I put it in my machine and tell it what material I'm going to cut, it's going to say, oh, well, you need to be on a blade setting of 3, and you don't have to adjust it yourself. It will adjust it right before it cuts. So when you're putting it in the Cameo 4, you need to make sure that this little lever is pulled out, so it will actually fit in there, and you just drop it in and then push it down. You want that to be pushed all the way down. The flat side goes against the machine. So push it down and kind of hold it there as you slide that lever in, so it doesn't end up with any kind of gap between the blade and the holder. So that is ready. And okay, question.
Is there auto blade for the 4, only for the 4, or is there for an older machine?
So the auto blade, the auto blades go back to the Cameo 3. So Cameo 3 and Cameo 4 and Portrait 2, I think the Portrait 2. Okay, don't quote me on that. Definitely the Portrait 3 uses an auto blade. The Cameo 3 auto blade does not work in the Cameo 4 machine. The Cameo 4 auto blade does not work in the Cameo 3. The difference is this automatic tool detection. So the Cameo 4 automatically knows what tool you have inserted because of this little reader on the back. And the Cameo 4 is a different shape. So it's got this flat edge. The Cameo 3 auto blade is round all the way around the top. So make sure when you're buying a refill for your auto blade that you've got it for your correct machine. Okay, so I've got that inserted again for my Cameo 4, and we told the software that we were going to be using letter size paper, and so we need to use letter size paper. This cover for your mat, you want to keep it. So this is going to keep your mat protected when you're not using it. So keep this little shield and set it aside while you're cutting. And then when you're done cutting and you've got your paper back off of your mat, you put this shield back on it to keep it protected from dust and cat fur and all those fun things. Okay, so when you put your paper on your mat, you're going to put it on the same way you saw on your screen in the software. So anything smaller than 12 by 12 is going to go on the upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to align it along the top and along the left edge for my 12-inch mat. Okay, and then I want to make sure when I'm loading it into the machine, for the Cameo machines, there's this really nice little line with an arrow that shows me exactly where the left edge of my mat is supposed to go. Your other clue is that these rollers should be gripping the edge of your mat the same amount. So if you have your rollers set in on any model of the Cameo, just make sure that you switch it again. So if I wanted to cut like vinyl, 12-inch vinyl without a mat, then I would move it to this inner position. But since I want to use the mat, I'm going to bring it out to the furthest position, and you'll feel it kind of settle into its groove. And then make sure that your knob for your rollers is always pointed up. That means your roller bar is locked in place. So once I've got these, I've got my mat in the right place, my rollers are going to grip this evenly, I've got my mat aligned with the left edge, then I can just press the load button and that'll pull it in. Your page setup panel is going to know how much to pull it in based on what you set on there. So make sure that you're always setting your page setup panel accurately for the media you're using and the mat that you're using. Okay, so let me go back to the software briefly. Okay, so now it sees that I've got the tool in there, the auto blade, and my material, so I can do a test cut to see what I need to do, if that's going to work, but I actually know that this is going to work. This is Michael's Recollections paper, and it's a new blade and a sticky mat, and so I can usually get away with the default settings. So cardstock textured heavy is my favorite for this paper, and so that tells me to put my blade on 3, or it will automatically adjust it to a 3. My force is on 30, my speed is on 4, and I've got 1 pass. Now, as your blade gets more dull, or if your mat isn't quite as sticky, or a combination of those, you might need to increase your force a little bit. You might need to increase your blade by 1 amount. But this one, we're just going to go for it because we're running out of time. So I'm going to click send, and you will see the auto blade adjust, and it will cut. I'll click send, and then I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, so you can see that that is cutting exactly where it says in the software. I love the precision of the Silhouette machine. It cuts exactly where I expect it to. Okay, so now it's done. I am going to just lift it just a little bit to see if that cut all the way through. And I can tell that it did. And so now I can unload with just the little unload button. And when I take my paper off of my mat, especially if it's a sticky mat, a way to avoid the paper curling is to flip it over and peel the mat away from the paper. I like paper because it's not very scary to cut, and there's usually more than one piece. So paper is a great material for beginners, but I would start with a cardstock paper and not a super lightweight paper, because the lightweight paper sometimes won't cut as well. Okay, so now I have this little bookmark, and there's the little hole that we cut out. And so now I would just thread some ribbon through there, and that is a cute little bookmark. And I'll show you some of these other ones that I made. These were all made with just those shape tools, welding them together. And some of these I actually did do text and cut those out and so I cut one of the solid colored cardstock, and I cut exactly the same thing, but not with the words, because you can ungroup and move those words off of there. That has kind of a pattern, and so it shows through. So those are the kind of things you can do with just the basic tools in Silhouette Studio. So do we have any questions that I haven't answered? Okay, so my advice for beginners is to just cut something. The scariest thing is opening that blank page, not knowing what to cut. And then when you get something on the page, just pick a simple design, pick something from the library or one of your free designs that came from your machine. but just cut something, because the first cut is the scariest. And as soon as you have success with that, it just gets really fun. So thank you for joining me today. And if you have more questions, you can make comments on this video once it's posted on the Silhouette YouTube channel. I'll try and go back and read comments. But this